G'day there, brothers. Well, here we are, and it's that time of the week again, time for another podcast. And it's always a pleasure to catch up with my brother from another mother, one of my Kiwi brothers, Jayden Wilson. How are you, brother?
I'm doing fantastic, thanks, mate. And yourself, Phil?
Yeah, look, out of 10, I'm probably about an 8. How's your day out of 10?
I'd go a 7. A 7.
Go at 7? 7, solid? Okay. Well, of course, you're 3 hours ahead of us because you're over in New Zealand, so it's 9 p.m. over there. So, mate, why don't we just get stuck straight into it? Because in my heart, this is an important podcast to me because I'm a single father. I'm a divorcee and haven't lived with my kids for some 3 years now, and certainly miss living with my kids. So I thought it'd be a great place to start, Jayden, is give us a bit of an overview about who you are, the work you do, and who it is that you help.
Okay, mate. Yeah. So, as Phil's mentioned, I'm Jayden, and my path really started. My divorce and separation from my children started back in 2014. I had separated temporarily a couple of times before that, but went back each time. And yeah, the divorce was final in 2014. So up until that time, because of my troubles with my relationship and a mixture of that, as well as I chose to work in a career that was away from my family. And this is when my children were very young, and I spent a good 8 years of their first years growing up away in the mines. So I was working away like 40 weeks in a year. So spending 12 weeks in a year in my own bed and with my family, that in itself, as you would know, would have a massive impact on the relationships that I already had with my children, and that's being in a marriage. So myself, the way I dealt with that and was with drugs and alcohol to ease the pain I was feeling on a day-to-day basis. My drug and alcohol use kicked off well before then, back when I was young, but I mean, it just got worse and worse and worse as I went on until I came so dependent on it. And yeah, cutting a very long story short, I ended up, I tried to take my own life a few times. The first 2 times were overdose. The third time, was trying to gas myself in a car. And that was when I got to a point where I'd lost everything. I'd lost my friends, my family, my wife and my children, and I was left with sitting and staring at a bag of drugs that didn't even get me high. And I really thought, what was the point of even being on this planet? So that's sort of where I was at. And the funny thing, well, not the funny thing, the weird thing about that is that whole journey up until that point, I could have sworn black and blue in my face that I didn't have a problem and then I could give up whenever I wanted. So that's when when I was rescued in the car, that was the day that I was finally honest with myself, and I asked for help. So going away from the addiction side of things, as you would have just learned, that I already didn't have a relationship with my children to begin with. So I was admitted into a rehab, and where I spent five and a half months, and I came out, and the biggest thing that hit me was that not only did I not know my children, but they didn't know me. And it's the hardest thing I've ever had to feel in my life, even though it was hard in the past being away from them. Really, that pain really hit home once I was no longer in their lives, or no longer in their everyday lives. And I really didn't think that there was any way out, and any way that I was going to be able to fix the relationships that I had with my 3 beautiful girls. So yeah, that's about where I got to.
And mate, that's a very dark place, really dark. And I mean, unless you've been there, I think people can go, oh mate, that sounds awful. You can be empathic, empathise, but unless you've actually been in the gutter like that and really wanted to actually turn the lights out effectively to numb the pain and just escape, I think people just really can't relate. They can try to do their best. Let me ask you this question then, brother. Why do you focus your business on working with separated and divorced men, not just any fathers? Why have you picked that area?
Well, as you know, it's very close to my heart, because I can completely relate to anybody that's going through that disconnection that they feel from their children once being separated from them. And to be honest, yes, any father can create amazing relationships with their children. But when someone has been through separation or divorce and has, been distanced from their children, that pain that they feel becomes such a big driver, such a big driver to do whatever it takes to, get those children back in their lives, and back in their lives in a completely different way. And that is why, because one of my top values is connection, and I connect with people through shared experience, and that's how that's how I can really work with these men and get them to a place that they never really thought were possible.
Yeah, I think when you're in the thick of it, the fire, and you're in that emotional cauldron, it feels like there's just no way out. And I think hats off to you, brother. I mean, apart from the fact that you are working, I know some of the brothers that you've been working with and making a tremendous impact. I talk to them, and it's humbling for me, and I just love it, the fact that you are making a difference. And I would have thought for you as well, that's actually quite cathartic, part of your healing process, making you feel better about yourself, being able to take your own experiences, make it relatable, and teach men how they can make a difference in the connection and rebuild that connection and relationships with their own children.
Mm-hmm.
Mate, I want to ask you this question. Why do you think fathers feel that there is a disconnection to their children when a separation, or once a separation's taken place?
Okay, well, this really stems down to, excuse me, I'll just have a drink of it.
You grab some water there, brother.
This really stems down to when we're in the family unit, we all assume certain positions in that family unit in order for it to function somewhat efficiently. And whether, I might be generalizing a bit here, but most males are out there working every single day. Most mothers are the ones with their children on the day-to-day basis, dealing with those day-to-day issues. So it's pretty natural when you think about it that when a separation or divorce occurs, that the father that has spent the majority of his time away from his children starts to really understand that he doesn't really even know his children at all. And then again, that overwhelming feeling that you've sacrificed all this time to provide this good life for these children of yours, and yet you're left with nothing, with no relationship. So that does that answer what you were saying there, Phil?
Yeah, I think we're stuck on a treadmill quite often. And I know myself, I was a mortgage broker for 19 years. So I wasn't like you. I wasn't in the mines. I wasn't away from my children, but I would come home at night, or I'd do appointments at night. So you're missing out on a lot of the day-to-day activities, the interaction, the little things, perhaps sitting down, doing the homework with your children, or perhaps going out and kicking a football, or in your case in New Zealand, tossing around a rugby ball, or playing cricket at the nets. I mean, I did some of that, and I got to all their events, their activities. But I think a lot of the day-to-day things, I think we are so focused on the pressures of creating an income, being and feeling that pressure, Jayden, of being the breadwinner. We're the hunter. Women looked after the children and looked after the home and cooked the food. And we've done that since primitive days, where we were the ones going out to hunt for the animals. So we weren't there being part of that day-to-day nurturing. And I think personally, then that disconnection with separation, there's a lot of guilt. We feel guilty then all of a sudden of why weren't we present? And I think we've actually got to be a lot less hard on ourselves, because we did what we thought was right.
That's right. At the end of the day, we were doing what we had to do to like I said, to make that family either run efficiently or give our children a good life. Unfortunately, sometimes that means a life that we're hardly even a part of, and that's what hurts the most. And in my case, I I really felt like it was my ex-wife's job to do that stuff. I hadn't labelled it as that, but my obligation to the family had been met. I'd gone out and worked, and even if I wasn't working away and I was at home and I was working locally, I would come home from a hard day's work. I'd put my feet up on the couch, and I felt entitled. Like I was entitled to that time to myself, whether that was having a beer, whether it was doing whatever I was up to. Yes, I did talk to my children. Did I engage in their day-to-day activities and ask all about what was going on, what was troubling them? No, I didn't do any of that, because I had their mother there for that, and like I said, in the family unit, that works. There is someone emotionally nurturing your children, and you're going out and doing your job, but the thing is, when a separation or divorce occurs, especially with younger children, this is when each parent must take on the roles of the other parent. So if you were the one, usually the financial provider, you now have to create an emotional connection with your children, and vice versa. If you might have been the stay-at-home. Well, we're talking in regards to men, like the scenario I've just said, but the mother, they all of a sudden don't have the finances. They have to go out and find extra finances. All that is pressure on our kids.
Yeah, look, there's no doubt about that. What do you think a father needs to do to create a really, quality relationship with their children after separation and divorce?
Well, they need to do one of the hardest things that most men find, and that is taking a deep, long, hard look at themselves. Instead of pointing the finger with blame, instead of having resentments, instead of loathing and depression, and I don't say that lightly, Phil, because I suffered from depression since I was 10 years old. I didn't know that's what it was back then. It wasn't till I was in my late teens that I was actually, diagnosed and started taking medication. So, if we can do work around those things that we feel inside, those things that we feel that we have to hide from the world, they no longer have a hold of us. and we are able to be actually present like our children deserve us to be.
What have you found is the biggest thing that's standing in their way from having, if you like, building the relationship with their kids, apart from being, and as you say, taking a good hard look at themselves?
Yeah, well, pretty much just what I just discussed, because us men have been conditioned to not show weakness. We've all, for generations and generations, we've all been brought up like that. It's not showing, not being vulnerable, and admitting that we make mistakes, admitting that we aren't feeling well, and expressing ourselves. That's the biggest thing that is stopping us from creating a connection with our children like we'd never believe.
And how does that affect the way that a father parents his kids?
Well, as much as, because that's that same subject. So as much as we think we're great at hiding what's going on inside us, our children pick up on so much. And those negative emotions that we experience, they actually become the base of who we are. And everything that we do starts from us, from inside us, So to be able to show up for your children and be fully present, while masking all of these things that are going on inside us, it's just never going to work.
Do you think a lot of the men in this area who have become separated, divorced, are dealing with issues of mental illness?
Oh, most definitely. Most definitely, Phil. And the hardest part about that is that no one wants to put themselves in that category of mental illness. We all feel these things, but at the end of the day, if you are having continuous negative thought patterns, if you are engaging in those thoughts and they are repetitive, and you're going over and over and stuff in your head, the simple fact is there, Phil, that it's mental illness. And that same mental illness is what's killing so many men out there.
And you yourself, you've just shared with us, and thank you, brother, for sharing that from age 10 you felt that you had clinical diagnosis of depression. So you yourself can relate to these challenges of having had mental illness, of having wanted to end your life. You tried to end your life more than one time.
Yeah, very much so. And it's crazy, because the tools I learnt along the way, that they are what completely changed my life. But with the depression I had, right after I was clinically diagnosed and went on medication, you see, that there was the only action that I thought I had to take, was to take my medication. That's the only thing I thought, and I just thought I had to this was part of me for the rest of my life. And that's not only that, Phil, is that it gave me something to blame. It gave me something to point the finger at. I pretty much separated myself from the depression like it wasn't a part of me. And then when anything didn't go right, I just pointed the finger to that.
So you didn't know what you were saying. Well, it's not my fault, it's the depression.
That's right. I wasn't taking responsibility for it one bit.
Sorry to interrupt you, Jayden. The thing that I really love about what you've said, and you said it earlier in our discussion, is that men need to really be open and honest with themselves. They've got a lot of work. They've got to look within themselves and look at rather than blaming their spouse or their ex-partner. Sure, there's some blame, but they've got to take some ownership themselves.
Yeah, you're exactly right, Phil. And no matter what situation we find ourselves in, we do have some part to play. Well,
it reminds me of a saying, Jayden, my dad once said to me. And I think this applies to not just our topic tonight, but it applies everywhere, which is no matter how thin you slice it, there's always two sides to every story. We as the men often will think we're the victim, and in many cases we are, but we also have a part to play.
That's right.
And we need to own it.
We do. And, you see so many men out there facing some crazy fears, jumping out of planes, jumping off base jumping, just for an example. Yet when it comes to taking that honest look within ourselves, it's something that the majority of men shy away from. That fear is just so strong.
Yeah, a lot of men don't want to do the work, do they?
No.
It's interesting. It reminds me of like one of the greatest fears in life is public speaking. People go, oh, that is just one of the greatest fears. And I think it's interesting in the work that you do with men that I think a lot of those men probably had that same fear of really. But I would imagine when they do finally step into that and show that courage, Jayden, that helps them grow into the man that they really need to be.
That's exactly right. And it's the base of everything I do to help men. We all want, we've come to an age where we want instant gratification, and we want things.
Yeah, so do our brother.
We want things the fastest and the easiest way. Yet, through what I do and through how I help men, that'll starts from here. That'll starts with you want to create a relationship that you never thought was possible with your children. Then that relationship first has to be built with yourself.
I think you got to like yourself first. And in fact, in Keep Five Alive, we talk about the first thing we want men to do is self-care. How do you feel about you today? You got to live with yourself 24/7. So you might as well get to know yourself and start to like yourself. And sometimes we don't like ourselves at the start. And therefore it's important that we do the work to ask ourselves, well, if I don't like myself, what could I like about myself? Or what are some good qualities I have or some good things that I've done? I often encourage brothers that if they really are struggling, a way to like yourself is to do things for others, because we then feel good about service. And it just could be something as simple as, I just remember going for a walk the other day with my dog. As you know, Jayden, and anyone that knows me, I walk every morning. And it was a beautiful little old Greek lady. And the poor little lady, seriously, she was trying to move the big bin on wheels out onto the street. And it was a big bin and it was full. And she looked at me and she hardly spoke English. And I looked and would you like a hand? And I moved two of the big bins. And she was so grateful that he was a young guy. I love that young 54. But he was a man. And I felt good that I was able to make her day a little bit better by doing a simple task of just helping her put her bins out on the street.
Mm-hmm.
Take the focus off ourselves and what can we do for someone else? It really does, Jayden, go back to when we asked that question. And I know I've got it on the ticker tape on the bottom of the screen, but hey, brother, how's your day going out of 10? Think about how you could take the focus off you put it onto someone else. It's a great thing. Absolutely. Mm-hmm. Mate, I want to ask you a question. How does a father, and I can tell you, I know I've been through this myself, how does a father deal with the stories that are told about him to his children? Because that can be absolutely gut-wrenchingly devastating.
Yeah, and I've been there.
Me too.
So, firstly, it all boils down to accepting that you have no control over what anybody else says, does, the actions and behaviors of others. You've got no control over any of it. And when we can come to a place of an acceptance around that, then we can continue to maintain the same behaviors and actions that we feel are positive influences on our children, and continue to do those and show those to our children, right? So I'm not saying that if there's an allegation, say someone said you murdered them, right? You're not going to stand there and say nothing and just say, oh, I accept that, I can't control what they said, right? So what I'm trying to say here is, if your children come to you and say, Mum has said such and such about you, and instead of getting angry and instead of pointing that finger back at her, one of the best things we can do, even though it's very, very hard and very, very hard to take, but I mean, one of the best things that we can do is to say, well, it's unfortunate that your mother's told you that, but it's simply not true. And then maybe some discussion around what it is that you do, that you are, or that you do, and you've just got to maintain that. At the end of the day, your children will see two lots of behavior, and it is up to us, like I said before, to maintain that same positive behavior that we want our children to also have repeating themselves, So
absolutely. And in fact, one of the brothers is just a great comment here. Self-acceptance is the work first and foremost, one moment at a time.
Beautiful.
Absolutely.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Oh, it's perfect. Because I really do think, and I've been there myself, we have to accept who we are. And quite often, like you, mate, working or being away from the kids 40 weeks in the year, you were doing what you felt you had to do to put food on the table, and you were just doing what you had to, doing your duty as you saw it. And you have to, because I know myself, brother, I dealt with, when I left my marriage, the guilt, oh my gosh, the guilt and the sense of abandoning my boys really just about tipped me over at times, to the point like, I didn't want to go. I didn't think I could go on, and feeling just, it's like your heart, your gut, your heart's been ripped out of your guts. It's very, very difficult. And that's a perfect statement. Self-acceptance is the work first and foremost, one moment at a time. Absolutely. Thank you for that, brother. Question. When do you think is a good time for a father to make a commitment, like connecting or reconnecting with his children after being separated from them? When do you think is a good time?
Well, the best time is as soon as possible. Realistically, after a separation is the even though you've got everything that's going on around the separation itself, I'm not talking about the children here, the relationship, the dysfunctional relationship that has ended, that really is one of the best times to make a commitment and dedicate yourself and shift your focus onto connecting with your children. Because we can, I've spoken to people that have done absolutely nothing about this for 2 years. And as you can imagine, the emotions that we experience on a day-to-day basis through this, growing stronger and stronger and putting us in such a dangerous place, right? So I would say that doing it as soon as possible is where it's at, because, this just brings me back to a memory of mine. And I used to, when I finally, because I didn't see my children, when I went to rehab, in that first bit there, I didn't see my children for 6 months. I seen them once, and that nearly killed me. But Sorry, I lost my train of thought there.
No, it's all about reconnecting with your kids, and as you said, look, rather than wait a couple of years, you said, look, you'd gone back to rehab or gone to rehab. You hadn't seen your children for 6 months, and your point was around that the value is in connecting with them as soon as possible.
Yeah, most definitely. Yeah. Where I was going with that was just a little bit of a part of my story. Actually, was when I finally started having them every second weekend. The hardest part for me was dropping them back to their mum. I'd pull up at our old family home, and then I would drive away, and I'd look in that rear vision mirror, tears just flowing down my face, and that didn't seem like it was going to get any easier. And I sat with that for quite some time until I actually realised where my focus needed to be. And then from there, once I sort of had a realisation there, I started to really make use of that time that I didn't have with my children, right? Instead of sitting there in my own depressive state, thinking over and over what ifs and all the rest of it, and instead of doing that, that is when I started to really look at who my children were. I'd made that decision then. Is
that what you're referring to, Jade? Sorry to interrupt you. You made a really important point, and that is, you said, when I finally realised where my focus needed to be. Can you just unpack that for us? What do you mean by that? Because I think that's a really important point.
So my focus, especially that sinking, gut-wrenching feeling of driving away and dropping my kids off, that focus, that consumed me for the next 2 weeks until I had my children again, right? So, that was what I focused on. And then towards when I get to see them again, I start, I'm going to see my kids. The thing is, I had them for 2 days, right? Every second weekend. And when it came to, I would say around lunchtime on the Sunday, my mood and my energy went straight to that place that I was driving away in that car. And guess who copped it? My kids, right? My energy was just emitted to them, and they took on my energy. So I ended up dropping off children to their mother that were unhappy because they had just mimicked the energy that I had been giving off, right?
Yeah.
When I realized that is when I had to shift my focus and realize that I was focusing all of my energy onto what I didn't have and what I couldn't have, right? And what I could have. So, I changed it to what I could have. So that is when I really used that time to my advantage. So I started to, because as I've already explained, I hardly knew my children. So I would use a whole week dedicated to one of my kids, and I would find out absolutely everything I could about them, right? I would write down personality traits. I'd write down anything I knew and anything I wanted to know, right? And then when it came to that time that I seen my children, that was how I was able to start rebuilding a connection with each one of them individually, right? And that just grew and grew and grew. And then I had questions about things, and and like it was a long process, but that's where my focus went. And then all of a sudden, one day, until I didn't even realize it, one day, dropped the children off, looked in that rear vision mirror, looked back at my eyes, looking at myself, and realized how big my smile was.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And I love the fact that you did the work, you invested, and your focus was on your children, on what was important to them, and you started to rebuild a connection by asking questions and learning and relearning about your kids. That's admirable, brother. One of the brothers has made a comment here. Every man must ask this question: where do I take shelter? Interesting. I'm not quite sure, brother, what you mean. Do you know what that means, Jayden?
No.
Perhaps he could make another comment. Let's hope he does. I want to ask you this. Is there a specific method that you use to help fathers create these ideal relationships to reconnect, to rebuild with their children?
Yeah, there definitely is, Phil. And so over the past 8 years, and in my journey to the absolutely amazing relationships that I share with my children today, something I'd never give up for the world now, but I am normal and I'm human, and I made some mistakes along the way. I wasn't perfect in any way. So, but what I did do is everything that I implemented that had absolutely amazing results from what I'd done, I all developed into my own specific strategy, which I've called the 3 pillars. And those 3 pillars are eliminate, discover, and connect. And the
Can you give us examples, Jayden, of what eliminate, discover, and connect? Give us an example of each one of the 3 pillars, please.
So eliminate, which is the first pillar, all focuses on us as an individual, our situation, and gaining acceptance around it. No matter what situation and what we've found ourselves in, gaining acceptance around that situation, right? And starting to build that relationship with ourselves. So effectively, it is the beginning of starting to eliminate the negative emotions that we are experiencing due to our current situation. Okay, so, and then the second pillar of discover, which these all tie into each other. The second pillar of discover is about really discovering who your children really are and what it is that they actually want and need from you as their father. We have to understand that each one of our children, they are all so unique. They have their own wants and needs. They have, one question that stumped me was that it got asked to me, and this is something that I take my clients through, but how do each one of your children want to be shown love? You know what? You know where that took me? Straight back to my marriage. Why? Because in the 18 years that I was with her mother, the children's mother, not once did we ever have the conversation and ask each other what we needed to do to make them feel loved. How do you like me to show you love? Right?
Are you talking about your ex-wife as well as the children, or just the children?
No, I'm just relating this to, my ex-wife, but I mean, this is about the children, okay? So I'm relating it to my ex-wife in a way that, how does your child want to be shown love? How does your child want you to show you that you're proud of him or her? Most of us just think, it's gifts, or it's, we have these generalizations, and we generally treat each child exactly the same, when that's where the biggest mistake lies. Because, and especially in my path, where I watched my two youngest girls following the footsteps of my eldest, and trying to be exactly like her, because they could see a connection with her and me. And the reason that connection was there was because when things were in a good place. The reason that connection was there was because she was pretty much a carbon copy of me, right? Her personality, the whole lot, she was pretty much a carbon copy. So when we came to communicate, we just gelled together like that, And what kicked in then was the jealousy from her younger siblings. So they started to try and be someone that wasn't true to themselves in order to feel that connection with me. Whereas that was where I needed to find ways in connecting with each of my other 2 children in their own unique ways in order to, eliminate that perception of favoritism, So I went a bit off track there, but I've got to give some context to what I'm saying, and then that leads on to pillar 3, which is connect. And that is when we can gain acceptance around our situation. And that means going into everything and looking at, what part we've had to play and what impact that's had on our children. When we can do that and then go into the discovery phase, this is how, we can start to begin to create an open and honest relationship with our kids. Because you cannot tell me that anyone out there does not want an honest and open relationship with their children. It's pretty much a general thing that everybody wants, okay? The problem being that if you're not role modeling that honest and open behavior yourself, then there's no way, no matter how much you encourage your children, they are going to follow suit because you haven't shown them how.
Mate, those pillars are very powerful. I myself was going, wow, I probably don't know the language of love for my boys. They're both very unique personalities. And I'm thinking, while you was talking about that, how they need me to show them love. And you're right. People will say, oh, it's spending time with them. But it may not be always spending a lot of time, because that may not be an opportunity. But You're right. You've nailed that. I think that's so important that we ask that question, and it takes courage.
It does.
To ask that question.
And it's all about the action that we're prepared to take. Because, when I seen this happening in my situation along my journey, straight away I went out and I did extensive research into things that my other 2 girls were passionate about, their interests, even the schoolwork that they were doing, right? So then I could connect with them on these subjects, and just that the effort alone that I put into that really showed my children, each one of them, just how important that they were to me.
Well, you're investing. What you're showing is you're investing. And like I know with one of my boys, he's into audio visual. My other one's into sport, and he loves his soccer and he loves his basketball. And as a mate of mine said, just ask questions around the sports. If that's his thing, if that's the way you guys connect, I think, that makes a lot of sense. Investing that time.
Yeah, everything that we can. And so, like when I'm saying that if we're not role modeling that behavior ourselves, I mean, and I was a sucker for this. I always did it, especially when I felt so entitled when I came home from my long day's work, right? The simple conversations when your child comes to you and go, how was your day? And you answer with good. What's that? And
it's a nothing answer, really.
Yeah, and then you ask your children about something and they give you a one-word answer and you get shitty about it.
Yeah, that's right. They're modeling what they've been taught. So if you're not going to give them any depth to the conversation, oh, yeah, good. Well, what are they going to do any different? I think our Facebook users given us a little bit more, because I thought that was quite cryptic before, but shelter or refuge. Where do you go for support and friendship and faith in day-to-day life? Really powerful. Very powerful. Some people go for faith in day-to-day life spiritually, but I think connection with people, and going for support. I mean, very important is to reach out and ask for help.
Yeah, definitely, and that's why what you're doing here, Phil, is just blowing me away, because I did. I lost all my support systems throughout my journey because of my actions and what I got up to. I did find a support circle when I entered the rooms of Narcotics Anonymous and Alcoholics Anonymous. And, if I didn't have that, there's a good chance I wouldn't be here talking to you now. But, that's how important I know support is. And what you're creating here, Phil, is just, like I said, it really blows me away, because it's what we need out there. This is the support system that's lacking. A lot of us men do not want to talk about our stuff because we just don't, because that's who we've become, and that's not becoming now. That's over generations and generations. That's just how we are.
Well, I think that's exactly right. And guys like you and I, that's what we were taught. We were taught not to talk about this stuff.
Yeah.
We were taught to go almost retreat back into the cave. So when you had stuff on your plate, on your mind, you just buried it further and further down. And that's actually, as you know, that's not the answer.
Mm-hmm.
But hopefully Saving Brothers is a way for men to be able to find solace, connection, and to know that it's important to speak up. And apart from the mental health side of things, it's the physical manifestations, Jayden, that come about, that we create illness and disease by bottling things up, disharmony in our own health. And I appreciate the kind words that you said about what we're doing. Look, we're only just getting started, mate. The last year or so has really been building infrastructure, and we haven't even kicked this thing off yet. But mate, I love what you're doing, and I thank you for your kind words. Your method, how long does it take, do you think, for a father to get results?
How committed do you want to be?
Oh, I like that. But that's a bloody good answer, mate. It's really true.
It is. We can beat around the bush. We can procrastinate about it. But at the end of the day, if creating if transforming a connection with your children is what you really desire, and you put in the right amount of consistency, commitment, and dedication, right? And it can be done through I've got a program which is the 3 pillars that can be done in as little as 12 weeks. And I'm not saying someone has to go and quit their job to focus solely on this. I put it this way: if I was able to create what I've got with my girls now, the amazing relationships I've got with my girls now, if I was able to do that, only having them every second weekend, then this is something that's achievable for anybody, right? But what I'm saying with my 12-week program is that if you can commit to putting in an hour a day, 12 weeks, things will be dramatically different. I will tell you, brother, you're getting me thinking. I mean, I don't live with my sons, but you're getting me thinking, gosh, you know what? I'm busy building my other businesses, Saving Brothers. And whilst I talk to my boys probably a couple of times a week, and particularly because of lockdown, and one of them's finishing his uni degree and the other one's really busy with his first job, they're busy. But there's always time. And you're actually making me think, gosh, I could do so much more. And you're absolutely right. I loved your answer, mate, and it was spot on. How committed are you? If you're committed an hour a day, how badly do you want to reconnect with your kids? I love this, and thank you for that great conversation about the relationship we have with our children. I think the most important thing here, guys, is we want to put this sort of forum on, this kind of discussion, because we know the pain of not, both Jayden and I personally know the pain. I mean, I haven't lived with my kids, I can tell you, since the 14th of June, 2018. My boys are 19 and 21. I've probably spent 2, maybe 3 nights with my boys under my roof since then. Now, they're young men. I couldn't give a toss if they were just sitting on the couch on their computer or watching TV or watching sports or whatever. I couldn't care. I'd just be happy that they were just there. So there's a lot of men out there in a lot of pain, Jayden. You and I both know that. We know that there are men that have had, unfortunately, women make stuff up about them, taken out intervention orders against them. Women are, and men can be toxic as well. So please, I'm not just casting
giving the women a whack, but there are plenty of women that are angry, and in some cases for very good reason.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, too often we see that the children are put in the middle as the pawn, the human shield. And really, the women are there trying to punish the men. And sometimes the men are trying to punish. So it does go both ways. Again, I'm not here just to hang women. But both sides have got to get to the realization that it's the children that are suffering when the parents are engaging or saying your father's this or your mother's that. That's not fair on the kids.
Not at all.
Not at all. How do you think, Jayden, this is my final question for you, brother, because you got to go to bed at some stage. How do you think that the work you are doing is going to have an impact on the world, brother?
Well, Phil, it goes much, much deeper than what I'm doing to help these fathers, because we know, and this is one of the biggest reasons why we're sitting here together today, we know what mental illness does to us. We know what mental illness does to us as men, right? If we can create an open and honest relationship with our children by saying, by being that ourselves and being able to express what's going on for us. And I'm not saying our children are our counselors here. Well, obviously there's adult stuff that children do not need to hear, but I mean, if we can encourage our children by modeling the behavior, right, then these children are going to grow up. And I shouldn't just say grow up, because there's men I've worked with as well who have adult children. So what I'm trying to say here is the bigger picture is that these children are going to grow up, and that behavior to them is going to be normal. And they're going to parent their children in the same way. And if they do that and they continue to do that, then that ripple effect is going to continue and continue, where we can one day finally say goodbye to us men having to be strong and not show our weakness. I'm not saying to society out there, I'm not saying that we have to go and express ourselves to the whole world, but especially to the people that are close to us and the people that we love. And if we are able to do that, then that is going to be my effort in trying to change the world and preventing suicides and prolonged mental illness in the future and the future of our kids.
Mate, it's an incredible gift. I just want to mention what this one of the brothers has said. I know my children hold considerable resentment against their father. And I also know that there is a lot of projection there. Am I perfect? No, I am not. And I've carried this pain for several years now. And brother, I would encourage you to reach out and talk to myself. I'm always available for a conversation, or Jayden, if you're part of his course, fantastic. Might be someone that you know, Jayden. But if it's not, we're very open to having conversations. And if there's ways that we can help, it's a huge burden, I think.
Yeah, well, that resentment that's towards you, or that it's not the end. Like, that can be worked through, but the way that we do that and the way that we can work through that is actually having a look at what this resentment is around, and
what's it stemmed from, what's it originating from.
That's right. And then actually having a deep look into that situation and really seeing what parts are true and what aren't. Right?
And I think you said, sorry, I've interrupted you again, but when you say important points, I want to highlight them. What's true? That's about being honest with ourselves.
Yep.
What did we bring to the potentially has caused some of that resentment? What could we have done better or differently?
See, the biggest thing here that you've got to understand is that, okay, take that, say we're looking at one resentment, take that and put it to the side for a second, okay? There's got to be things throughout your children's lives that you have done that you're not proud of, right? Or that you have done and you've made a mistake, right? If we can compile all these things and start to get a big journal going of all these things that we believe have had an impact on our children from our doing, right? And then if we can look at that and say, yes, I want to take responsibility for such, and such, and then actually take that to your children, not regarding this resentment part, right? Take this to your children and say, look, you know, and don't ever think that your children forget anything, because they don't. Something that may seem so insignificant to you could be absolutely massive. And I say that because I've got things stored inside me, or had, from when I was 6 years old, right? They might not sound to an adult when I tell them that they're either big or small, but I'll have those memories for the rest of my life, you know? So what I'm saying is, if you can get down in detail about these things and the responsibility that you need to take for them, and take that to your children and actually talk through it with them and say, look, do you remember such and such a time? And actually go into real detail. And when you do, that emotion that they've got connected to that situation will fire up inside them, and they'll be feeling it again, whether it's good or bad. But then you can bring that to the surface. You can talk about it. You can take your responsibility for it, right? And then you can give your apologies where necessary and say that you are going to commit to changing those sorts of behaviors going forward. When we can do such things like this, that right there is what will help your children to start to open up about the resentment, because you have set the precedent. You have shown them what it is to take responsibility and to share what's going on for them.
Brother, I think that's just a beautiful way to finish up our chat tonight. I think, mate, it's just been absolutely brilliant. I've totally loved connecting with you on this matter, and it won't be the last time. Guys, Jayden is available as one of our coaches if you want to learn more about what he's doing. And as I said, I know some of the brothers. I've spoken with some of them who are, and it's not easy. Like, your course requires work. It's a commitment. And as you said, and I know some of them have actually said to me, I had to take some time out, or I wasn't in the right headspace tonight to do that call with you. But that's okay. These guys are still very committed, and they're having great outcomes. Brother, respect. Thank you for sharing.
You're welcome. It's been a pleasure. Thanks for inviting me on here. It's been a pleasure.
Mate, look after yourself. As they say, keep five alive. Keep five alive. And, mate, we'll talk again soon.
Will do, brother.
All right, brother. Be well. Thanks, guys.
Okay.
Take care, everyone. Good night for now.
See you, bud.
See you, mate.